How is everybody doing? Strength Chat episode 131, and today I've got a very special guest for you. Today I'm joined by the CEO of OPEX. He mentors coaches and gym owners to develop successful careers and businesses. Today I am joined by Jim Crowell. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on today. It's always a pleasure to chat.
No worries at all. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. How are you? What have you been up to? What's been going on with you for the last couple of months and weeks?
Well, I'm getting used to you might hear either a dog in the background, or you might hear my wife on a treadmill, or you might hear something. So I'm just getting used to. We're still working from home, so that's a big change for me because what am I? 15 or 16 years into working, and I've always worked at an office, and I'm kind of one of those guys who's always spent a lot of hours at an office. So this has been a change for me. The hours haven't, lessened, but I certainly have, I've been in a different environment, which has been different. So really what we've been paying really close attention to are kind of two main things. And, one is COVID, and we're really trying to ensure that we stay out ahead of how we can support coaches, because that's really what OPEX is at the end of the day, is how do we support coaches as best as possible. And then secondarily, how do we really continue to look far enough into the future in order to ask ourselves, well, what is fitness going to look like with things such as COVID or social unrest or a new president in the United States or not? It's like all these things are very uncertain in this moment. And so we're trying to make sure that we strategize our way effectively through, okay, well, we don't know what's going to happen, so we want to be prepared for the likely outcomes of certain different things. So I love doing that from a strategic side, but it can be challenging here and there.
Absolutely, and you mentioned it there that there is a lot of uncertainty at the minute, and I know at the minute Leicester over here in the UK has gone into just sort of like a regional lockdown. Have you found that a couple of gyms have opened and got the ball rolling, and then have had to go into a process of shutting down a little bit? How have you found that, or how have you dealt with that with the gyms that you work with?
We're, as difficult as it is, we are trying to prepare our gyms for multiple waves of closing. So not just 2, but maybe 3, maybe 4. And I hope that that's not what happens at the end of the day. But I think particularly in the United States, given the number of cases and the speed with which the caseload is rising, there's going to be a very big desire to either shut things back down or to very much limit the number of people who can be in any establishment. So we're lucky in our gyms that our model requires fewer people in a facility, and we can go online. So if I look at the statistics of most large gyms, they experienced a significant reduction in clientele, obviously right away. And then as people started to come back, our gyms only lost about 7% of their clients because they took them online and coached them essentially remotely for a couple of months. Now, that was partially luck of the draw, but we knew how to coach remotely, right? So we were lucky that we had that skill set. We're lucky that we connected with True Coach, so our clients already had the platform and the user experience and the knowledge to work with the digital platform. So we were lucky there. As they start to open back up, though, certainly it's been a challenge to open back up from what is the city or state or province or country saying is required? That changes every day. And so our gym owners just have to be prepared for there to be a lot of pivoting that goes on by their governments. And that's okay, right? Because what you don't want is to be the scene of an outbreak or, a really hot spot area where the virus is spreading, so they're still prepared to take people online if they need, but they're certainly trying to create the environment that doesn't catapult the virus to a worse place.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned there, because I know a lot of gyms have been a little bit maybe slow in getting the online content working. I mean, I know when the gym that I'm at, we put on, I think we went into lockdown on the weekend, and then on the Tuesday we trialed out some online classes, and then from there we've been developing as we go, because it is sort of not untested waters, because I know online coaching has been a thing for quite a while, but adjusting and changing it, and thinking about the process of when the gym's opening and doing outside sessions. But when if a lockdown just goes in again, at least then we've got that buffer of, right, well, we've actually had a trial run of doing some online coaching, and to be fair, the response from the clients has been really, really good. I mean, we loaned out quite a lot of equipment from the gym. It actually looks, since I've come down, it actually looks as though we've been ransacked. But I'd rather have the clients who don't have any equipment at home to have that experience, and to be able to have a little bit more variability with the online coaching. So a couple of topics there. I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more of it as the chat goes on. But for everyone listening who might not know your background, how you came to be involved with OPEX, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself, Jim?
Yeah. Well, I went to Penn State, and was a tennis player there. So I've been in the athletic world my whole life. We played a bunch of sports in high school. And so I've always loved training. I've always loved competing. And I've always loved learning about sports movement, how I can improve my own self, so I've loved that side of growth. When I left Penn State, I became a hedge fund trader, actually, and moved to Columbus, Ohio, and then Columbus, Ohio to Austin, Texas. And gosh, did I learn a lot about the world when I was a trader. And so I did that for about 5 years, and just found that I wanted to be back in a fitness setting, a health setting. At that time, CrossFit was very, very early. So this was around 2009. I started to kind of dabble my foot into this functional fitness thing. And so early 2010, I decided that I was going to leave the hedge fund and move back to Pittsburgh, which is where I went to high school, and open a gym with a buddy of mine. So we did that. We grew that really quickly. We opened a second gym. We grew that really quickly. And then I found OPEX in 2012 as an education provider, and also as a remote coach, because I had aspirations of going to the CrossFit Games. So I was with those guys until 2014. I sold my gyms in 2014 and ended up moving down to Arizona to work for, it was OPT at the time, but to work for OPT. And I very quickly realized that I needed to be back on the business side for the company. We were very early on, we were the typical fitness company where it's like everything was based on James Fitzgerald, right? Like he was the coach, he was the educator, he was doing everything. It was him and his wife running the whole company. We realized we wanted to build out an infrastructure. And so I became the guy who started to really build out that infrastructure with a couple of key people, Megan Sweet being one of them. And we just started to build it. And over the years, we put some new products out, which in 2016 was the OPEX Gyms program. And we really did that because we wanted to have a system to deliver individual design. We taught individual design, and like that's what we're known for, right? Like we're really, really good at teaching people how to work with people one-to-one. I would argue maybe the best there is. I'm a bit biased, right? But we have a really, really good methodology to coach people one-to-one. But we didn't have the ongoing business system that allowed people to implement it into their gym effectively. And that became the gyms program. Since then, we've actually sort of evolved that into being CCP, which is mainly the coaching education, which is coach, client, professional. So there's a bunch of coaching information, but we've also included a bunch of business information in the course so that coaches can go through it and have a leg to stand on when they finish. Then now we have an accelerator program, which is much deeper business education for anybody who wants to put this into their business. And then for the people who want to be a part of the brand on an ongoing basis, therein lies OPEX Gyms. And so we've spent, I guess I've been here for 6 years, but we've spent, that time really building out what that life cycle looks like for a coach. And we just finished up a new accelerator. We just finished up the newest version of CCP. We've got new textbooks. We've got, coaching tools and the website. Like it's a cool product at this point that I'm really proud to be a part of. So it's been a cool experience.
Ah, nice. And obviously with a couple of topics there, and yeah, you mentioned about one area, which is obviously the coaching side of things, and this is where from my point of view, I want to learn about training and working with clients and all that side of things. But obviously, why I wanted to sort of pick your brains and have a little bit of a chat with you is obviously the business side of things, because I know, from a coaching point of view, to be able to develop that a little bit more. So just sort of diving into the first couple of questions. A lot of coaches have some really, really good knowledge, and in terms of when they end up getting clients, they can get them where they need to be, depending on their area of expertise. And the first thing that most coaches will do, they'll either set up a website or they'll set up, some form of social media. But then that's kind of it, and that's their business starting model, if you like. So from your point of view, and when you see coaches like that, and when you're mentoring coaches, is that a good starting point? Is there other areas that from a coach's point of view that they may be lacking? And what's the starting point to start developing their business that you would recommend?
Well, I think it's important for us to take a step back and talk about the tendencies of most coaches. So I've spoken to thousands of coaches at this point, and the tendencies of a large percentage of them is to default their time and energy into coaching their clients, as opposed to building out systems and structures and everything. And I get it, right? Like that's where most coaches want to spend their time. So I'm a little bit of an ugly duckling in this conversation, in that I'm asking those coaches who want to coach as their primary function to take a look at this thing called business, right? If I was a brand new coach, it's easy for me to say, I want to set up sales systems, marketing systems, retention systems, blah, 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 blah. It's another thing entirely to get buy-in from a coach who might be on their own, because they A, don't have the knowledge to do it, and B, don't really have the desire to implement it, if we're being honest. So one of the first things that I always ask of coaches is, what is the outcome they desire? And so if that is a dollar amount, which if you really press a lot of coaches, it often comes down to dollars, right? And if it is a time spent coaching, i.e. efficiency, which it often is when you dig down, then you can start to say, okay, let's talk about how you can make more money tangibly, and what it's going to require for you to coach enough clients who pay you enough money to make the type of money that you want, let's call it after taxes and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Now, that starts to connect a lot better with people, because now they're thinking about the systems that they have to build related to the outcome that they want, as opposed to the annoyance of having to put the system together. So I always kind of start with, where do you want to go? Why do you want to go there? Why is it so important for you to go there? So many coaches come to me, they're like, I want to make $100,000. It's like, neat. Why do you want to make $100,000? Most coaches don't really have an answer to that. It's like, it sounds better than 30. It's like, well, yeah, I get that. That's true. But when you start to dig down the rabbit hole and go, why is $100,000 so important to you? That's where there's a lot of important stuff that needs to come out for a coach, because that stuff is going to be the inspiration to get the work done that I know 90+% of coaches don't want to do. Yeah. So start there. When you actually think about the systems that you need, I always just boil it down to two parts. It's retention and acquisition. That's it, right? Like that's your whole business. We do not run complex companies, right? You don't have a bunch of inventory. You don't have a bunch of capital assets, blah, blah, blah. Like none of that exists probably if you're coaching. You need to manage your clients really well and increase your retention percentage. And you need to be able to acquire clients at a lower cost per you. And that cost is tangible in dollars, and it's intangible in opportunity cost in your time. So how do you increase retention? How do you increase acquisition? And then you start with, okay, well, what am I doing well right now? So typically, and it depends on the type of coach and the model that they're in, so it's like group training probably has a little bit lower retention percentage than like an OPEX gym, just because there's less connection there, but it's not guaranteed. But you need to have an idea of what you do really well. And then you need to say, okay, how do I lever that so that you can really make that optimized? And then for the part that you're not as good at, why am I not succeeding as effectively there? So it's really an analysis of what is currently happening. So to your question, it's like, if you don't have a website, do I think a website is important? Yes, because that's how people find you. And if people can find you, you can set up the message and the communication so that you can emotionally walk them through the reason that they should become your client. I love it, right? And I also love the idea of, let's call it residual income. A website, if you build it effectively, you don't have to work on every day. Yes, you're going to have to work on it sometimes, but you don't have to work on it every day, but people will find you through Google. So it's like, it's the website plus it's Google My Business. It's not just one or the other, right? You want both so that people can find you on a search engine, because that's customer tendencies. So it's like, okay, that's a great way of starting. Should I do social media? Then you ask the question, well, are your target market clients on social media? The answer is, of course, yes, but what platform are they on? And depending on, let's say that you worked with 85-year-olds, those people are not on TikTok. You know what I mean? So it's like you want to start to ask yourself the question, who are my clients? What are they demographically? And then what are they psychographically, i.e. emotional? Like, what is the message that they need to see, and where do they need to see it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in order for you to have success? And then the last big one is, you have to, like, I just know this because I've seen it a million times. You have to have more conversations with the people that you want to become your clients. Yeah. And I view a conversation as any time you are interacting with them. So this is a derivative way of saying you need more eyeballs. This is, it's the same idea, but you need to have more conversations with your people. But you need to recognize that the quality of those conversations changes via the way that that conversation is had. So if I have a face-to-face conversation with you like this right now, you and I are now connected forever. Now, how closely are we connected? Not that closely, right? But like, I've talked to you face-to-face. There's an intimacy of that conversation. I will now take a phone call from you, right? Because we've had this conversation. Yeah. But if I saw an ad from you and I never spoke to you before, I'm not that far into the relationship. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so this is the difference in how you have to think about acquiring clients. Is like, I'm all for ads. I'm all for them. But you just need to realize there must be the right outcome with an ad strategy, because it's not the same as a one-to-one conversation. So one of the cheapest, easiest things that I want most gym owners or coaches to do is to, when you can, COVID being a bitch right now, but when you can, I want people having more live one-to-one conversations. Yeah. Because you build a stronger network that can then expand. Yeah. Right? If you don't have the base network, the ads, you need to spend more on the ads because you don't have the network built initially.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I know we have an internship program at the gym that I'm at, and you still need to, exactly like what you said, you still need that connection. Whereas doing the whole social media and the website isn't just a case of to try and broaden your audience and try and get loads of people in straight away, because people buy into the connection that they've had with coaches, the reasons. And one of the key points that I picked out there is obviously your why, because I know when we work with clients, right, why do you want to put muscle on? Why do you want to lose fat? Why do you want to get fitter? Why do you want to do that? And I think sometimes as coaches, you can sometimes forget what your why is. Just one thing on there as well that I picked out. Obviously, you mentioned that it wasn't. There's not going to be a massive amount of of things that you need to work on when you're just starting from the business side of things as a coach. Why have you found that, that some coaches might turn around and say, oh, well, I'm worried that I'm going to get too invested in the business and then I'm going to end up stepping too far away from the coaching side of things, and trying to balance the both? Have you ever had any coaches mention that, and sort of what advice have you given?
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly valid question. And I think that if a coach doesn't think that they will run into that, I think that they're probably mistaken, right? Because this comes back to what the outcome you broadly want is, right? So for me, I now know at 37 years old, I'm the business guy. I know that. That is how I view my identity, right? And you can disagree with that, but I don't give a shit, because that's how I view myself. So if the coach wants to be and views themselves to be a coach, there will likely be some resistance to going more so on the business side, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But that's where you have to ask yourself, what is the outcome that I want? Because a lot of coaches, maybe if they're 4 years into coaching, maybe they want to coach 100%. A great example of this is Sam Smith. He's one of our coaches at Big Dogs, outstanding coach, younger guy. He knows exactly what he wants to do. And there will ultimately be a transition plan, 5 years, 10 years down the road, where he will start to move into a different role. But right now, he's dead set clear that he wants to coach and he wants to improve his trade and he wants to be the best there is. It's like, man, do I respect that level of clarity. Secondarily to that, though, and I'll just kind of keep Sam as the example, I love the idea that why matters, but I hope this is the best word, I'm also a pragmatist, right? Like, I don't give a shit how much you want something if you don't build habits to work towards that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So just being blunt, and I have the ability to do this because I'm now on the business side, but there are a lot of coaches who say, I want to do this for this reason, and then they don't put any consistency into their execution of it. And I'm like, you don't really want to do it. And then they get upset with me. I'm like, prove to me that you actually want to do it. So there has to be a tangible level of habit that's built. And habit is somewhat counterintuitive to human behavior, right? Because we don't technically like change very much. So there's this really good, and again, to go back to Sam, I know what Sam does on a daily basis, and that guy is practicing every single day, and the coaches and the gym owners that we work with, whether it's Big Dogs or OPEX or other companies that we work with, that is what we're trying to get them to put in play, is that practice, because that practice helps you understand, is this really what I want to do in the long run? I've got no problem if somebody spends 3 years building something and then it's like, you know what? I'm ready for a change. I'm like, awesome. What's the change? Why is it important to you? It's like, and then you rebuild the habits to continue to move. It's like, to me, that is evolution. That is improvement. That is growth. I think that's a beautiful thing. So I think coaches shouldn't overly worry about that, right? It's like, if you feel like you're being pulled into the business side because you think it's the best thing for you, then lean into it.
Yeah.
But if you feel like you're pulling in, you hate it, you don't want anything to do with it, kind of a couple of operational pieces now come to mind, right? Like, do you have a business that can scale large enough for you to hire somebody to do the role that you don't want to do?
Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no, but you need to be honest with that, or else you'll just continue to have to play on both sides all the time. And that's just a lot of tension.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
I completely buy into that, because I know, as you were sort of chatting there about Sam, I was kind of thinking about my own sort of process, if you like. And a couple of years ago, I got made head coach of the gym that I'm currently at. And over the first couple of years, I thought, right, I can really put a stamp on, how I want the coaches and the training and on the gym floor, what's going to be delivered there. I still had to go to meetings with the owners and that sort of stuff to talk about the business side of things, if you like. But it wasn't really what I was interested in. It wasn't I just wanted to be in the trainers meeting thinking about, right, how can we improve this? But as we've gone on, and the systems that we've got in place as a coaching team has been really good. So now, exactly like what you say, that natural progression or evolution, I'm taking a little bit more interest in the business side of things, and trying to find out a little bit more and learn, because in a couple of years' time, it might be, I might think, right, another gym like the facility might be open, where if I go to that facility, I'm going to have to focus on the business side of things a little bit more, just because there's that. I've got that base of the systems that I've put in place from the coaching side of things have worked, which exactly as you say, because there'll be times when, right, okay, I want to work on this project, right, you've got to that, okay, so what's the next step, and develop and grow from there. Just touching on that because I know sometimes there is always that talk of, when you're a coach, the long-term goal may be potentially opening a gym. Some people obviously don't want that. They just want to work within their gym and develop their own model, and develop their own business. Do you think sometimes there's a bit too much pressure on coaches to open a gym, or do you think people look into it too soon without developing the systems that you talked about in the background?
Yeah, I think that let's call it, with the proliferation of this small micro gym, that's kind of a double negative. You probably just need to say, Mike, there's a lot lower barrier to open up a gym than there was, let's just call it 20 years ago. So let's just take a big time frame. So yes, I do think that there is a desire, potentially an unfounded desire, for people to become gym owners, because particularly in the United States, we believe that owning things is the best. And I get it, right? Like, if you can own a profitable asset that returns a good percentage to you on an annual basis, I love it. You know what I mean? Like, that makes sense to me. The thing is that all gym businesses aren't created equal. And so if you create a gym business that doesn't create a return for you, you're actually going to lose money and do a lot more work for the privilege.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of coaches, like, I guess if I were to say, I find more coaches think they should be gym owners than don't, right? So I think that it's perfectly admirable to coach. I don't think you have to own a gym. I think if you want to own a gym, you have to ask yourself, is the business part of this appealing to me? Do I accept that there's a risk to this, i.e. I might lose money, I might lose a bunch of time, I might have more stress? If you can't reconcile the answers in a positive way, then I would argue that you shouldn't be a gym owner. And that's not me taking a shot at you. That's me hopefully saving you years of hard work, stress, and potentially money loss. Because a lot of people open gyms and they don't think it's that expensive, but however you cut it, it's going to be like $25,000 at a minimum to get into a very, very small gym with no build out and very little equipment. So it's like, there is an investment. You have to take that into account. And the level of stress that goes onto the owner's shoulders is immensely different than the coach. And it's perfectly okay to not want to take that on.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it, because I actually sat down and had a conversation with a coach that I used to work with, and we both sort of said, yeah, do you know what? We really enjoy the coaching side of things. The whole stress of, if there's another coach on, or we have to do wages and everything like that, if it ever gets to that point, it becomes a lot more stressful. And I think, a lot of people get involved in coaching or the fitness industry because it starts out because they enjoy it. I got involved in coach. Well, I kind of fell into coaching after playing sport, but I really enjoyed it. I love seeing the progress that clients do, and exactly as you say, there is going to be stressors there, which it doesn't want to start affecting. Because I can imagine the amount of stress that's involved on the business side of things can start actually affecting the on-the-floor coaching and service that you're probably going to do, which is what clients have have bought into the first place. So with coaches that are, maybe training outside of or training in another facility, what are your thoughts on? Do you think that they're potentially limiting themselves in terms of the business model that they can implement compared to opening a gym, or is there actually no difference in terms of the infrastructure behind them that they're going to be delivering?
I mean, I'm kind of one of those guys on the business side that I don't think that there are necessarily hard and fast rules for something like that. So I've seen coaches who have created amazing opportunities for themselves and never owned anything.
Yeah.
It's like I have owned multiple gyms. I'm not in an ownership position right now, and I feel like I'm doing great things. So I think that there are many, many different ways to skin a cat. I think there's many ways to make money. I think that you can do very well as an owner or not as an owner. And so I'm hesitant to try to put a black and white answer on your question, because I think that a coach who wants to be a gym owner needs to want to be a gym owner, not because of possible profit, especially when you're going to open a gym model that is owner operator based. So if you were to open, let's just say an Orange Theory or whatever, many of the owners of those facilities are not the coaches inside of them. Whereas a lot of unfranchised or licensed or affiliate or whatever gyms, you're not only the owner, but you're also the head coach, and you're also the head accountant, and blah, 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 blah. And there's nothing, like, I did that. I loved that, right? But a lot of people don't love that. And the profit on that might be pretty good because you're doing all the work and you're taking money as an owner, which is better taxably than if you were to take it out as all in salary. But if you try to sell that gym, it's very difficult because you're going to have to replace yourself in all of those roles. So the future cash flows or the value of that business doesn't look very good to a potential buyer. And so you now probably cut your potential buyers down dramatically, because now you need to buy or sell it to somebody who's also wants to be an owner operator, but that doesn't make the value of the business more, right? So I just think people need to be very clear what they're trying to build, what the potential for that is, and are they building an asset, or are they building something that they just love and they're not trying to make some kind of a long-term return on that business? And that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people, but that is the current state of many, many gyms out there.
It is interesting because I know, using myself as an example, and maybe in a couple of years down the line, going back to what you mentioned about what's your actual why. So obviously at the minute, the gym that I'm working in has its own owner. He's got his own thoughts and philosophies and how he wants his gym to be, and and all that sort of stuff. And for me, it's a little bit like, right, well, actually, I think it could be done this way or done that way, and because I think the beauty of the fitness industry is that there's you can have a discussion about things, and people have different thoughts on which way to go. So the thought of that is this: you'd want it to be a place where you want to deliver what you want to deliver, rather than, right, I want to open a gym, I want to get 1,000 people in, they're all going to pay me all of this, and I'm going to be driving around in Lamborghinis. The whole point of it is to be a facility of, right, this is what I want it to be. I want people to come here, and this is going to be the end product of it, because it's kind of that saying of build it and they'll come, if you like. And then the profit off of that is a bonus, because like what we mentioned before, you get involved in the fitness side of things, because you enjoy it, and because you want to ultimately help people, rather than just doing it for profit. Do you think that's where sometimes the coaches that potentially are looking into gyms and are looking to make a profit, do you reckon that sometimes actually hinders them, and they kind of get found out a little bit?
Well, I would definitely say that I think more people get into the gym business with a lack of understanding, than with too much understanding. So I'm not sure if people get found out, or I might be misinterpreting what you mean by being found out, but I do absolutely believe that many gym owners' expectation of success is vastly overrated. I think there's a large overconfidence bias in many gym owners. And I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm just saying I think that people need to realize that going into any business opportunity, be it a gym or anything else, your tendency will be to overinflate what your success will be. And so I think it's important for somebody to realize, like, what is the optimal capability of this gym? And really that comes down to, what can I charge? How many people can I have as members? And what does it cost me to serve those members? Yes, there's another cost structure, but it's like, really, it's going to come down to those things. If you then do the math to realize what optimal is, you then have to ask yourself, how long is it going to take me to get to optimal?
Yeah.
And that's never just overnight, right? Like, I don't care what the internet guru marketers tell you. It's never overnight. So if you start from there, then you have to say, okay, let's just say it's going to take me 3 years to get to that point. That's realistic. So what does my cash burn look like to get to break even, right? Now, keep in mind, most gym owners in small gyms need profit because they need to eat every month, right? So it's like, they're not paying themselves a salary, but they're drawing out their profit, to their pocket because they need to eat. That creates a potentially vicious cycle where people aren't reinvesting in the gym to grow it. So if your early momentum stalls, you don't have an infrastructure based around assets and resources to continue growth. So you have to start and do something totally new.
Yeah.
So I would like people to start from the fact, okay, this is optimal. This is what I need to do on a milestone and on a reinvestment basis to reach optimal.
Yeah.
Once you get to optimal, that's where most of the money will start to get distributed back to your pocket, unless you want to go open another gym or whatever, right? But I think a lot of people don't think about that. They don't think about the time it's going to take, and they don't set themselves up to reach optimal. So they just constantly restart not from zero clients, but like from zero strategy, and they just go over and over and over again. So kind of to answer your question on being found out, I think that you need to know what optimal is. You need to know what that pathway looks like. And then you probably need to take some sort of a percentage of that for your overconfidence.
Yeah.
Right. And I just think that that's a realistic way of being honest about the expectations, so that you don't run out of cash or you don't not get to eat for a month.
Yeah. I think one of the things there is like what you mentioned about, reinvesting in the gym. I mean, we've got to a point where, because obviously, we've got, I compete in powerlifting myself. So, I'm all about the barbells and plates, and, it'd be great to, develop that area. But we've also got a calisthenics coach, which, want to have the rings and change the setup on there. We've also got, a boxing coach as well, which obviously they've got areas to go into. But having that little bit of a buffer to reinvest in the gym, that's what's going to keep the current members, because obviously you mentioned about that at the start, to keep that retention. But also, as the gym starts developing, other people are going to look in and be like, oh, okay, so, they're actually, they've got this new piece of kit, or they're developing this area. And actually, it's as though you sort of read my mind a little bit on one of those questions there. The next thing was, you mentioned about the business gurus that you'll see, which is that, you can grow a business in X amount of time. And I know, I speak to clients quite a lot that sometimes a little bit of a Kickstarter or a set period of time for a program serves a purpose sometimes. But from the coach's point of view and the business point of view, what are your thoughts on these sort of like, quick fixes and get to X amount of profit in a certain time? Do they serve a purpose? Do you recommend them? Or, a little bit like what you mentioned of the longer term of, right, this is what optimal is, and working towards those. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that let's break it out into the acquisition and retention side for this conversation. Most of the marketers that you're going to see online are coming at you from the acquisition side. You know, they're going to say, I can put clients into your business.
Yeah.
That's the promise, right? Now, typically what that structure looks like is I'm going to do ads to get you leads. You then have to follow up with those leads and close on an offer, right? That offer might be a 6-week challenge, or you know, it might be a personal training start, or whatever, right? So typically where I see the breakdown occur is that it's really freaking easy to get a lead. It's really easy. So anybody who says that it's hard is wrong. Okay, it's easy to get a lead, because you put a Facebook ad out with a lead form to click a button, and a lot of people will click the button. What happens is what happens after the button is clicked. So now you start talking about a funnel, right? Like, I'm a funnel guru, right? So now you have to say, okay, well, this email or text, depending on what the campaign is, that needs to be set up to go out, and you need to nurture that person to, I want to get on a call with this person, you know, with the gym owner, right? That often is a breakdown where the person who gets you the lead doesn't do a good job creating the funnel, or doesn't create the funnel at all. And then the secondary place where it often breaks down is if somebody actually books a call, the gym owner is then required to close them. And if the gym owner has no functionality, you know, if the gym owner doesn't call that person back within 5 minutes, I'm a speed to lead guy. If you don't call them back in minutes, you lose them. So I'm saying it's partially on the company or this guru marketer, because they often don't build the funnel effectively. And it's partially on the gym owner, because they don't actually know how to sell. So what you need is, you need to say, what am I not going to have in place? And how do I build those systems out before I spend the money, in order to get those people to ultimately book, and then to convert off of the trial? Because typically the offer is low barrier, i.e. not expensive offer. I close you on that. You do it for 4, 6, 8 weeks. And then I need to close you again on a monthly membership. I got no problem with that. But most gym owners are not set up properly to accept the leads. Most gym owners, you know, you hear they're like, oh, I got 267 leads for my gym, you know, in 30 days. It's like so easy to do. The question is what did those leads do? Do they get on phone calls? And can you, as the owner, close them? That's what matters. And by the way, that doesn't touch the retention side. If you can't retain your clients, you're just always going. I would argue that you need to make sure that your retention systems are good, so that when you spend money to put it in, they stay. And so I'm not against marketing at all. You need it, but you need to recognize where the holes in this equation are, so that
it froze a little bit. Then I wonder what happened. With the retention side of things, and because you do see these adverts, and it's always about, I can get you 100 clients, I can get you all this, but it's always as though coaches want to always look for new people coming in, and you know, it always has to be I want to try and get as many people in as I can, whereas actually, you know, being able to retain a good, strong core group of members is going to you know, last a lot longer, and then you can start adding that up, rather than, you know, trying to get new clients in all the time, and exactly like you say, you know, not starting from square one, but trying to convert people all the time. And I know we touched on it a couple of times of having that buy-in, and having that connection with people, so they're actually going to stay with you, rather than trying to look for new leads or new leads all the time, because you just, you know, pouring water into a leaking cup, if you like. And then that's
well, I think so. Really quickly, sorry to cut you off. I think something that's important here is to figure out how they improve their own business. The marketer or the acquirer was trying to do that. And what I have found, you know, because I got a lot of friends who are in the fitness marketing industry, right? And what I found from them is that, okay, yeah, they know how to get leads, and yeah, they can build a funnel, but at some point it's actually not cost effective for them to do the rest, and gym owners don't want to pay for the rest. So one of the difficulty business is to accept those things like leads, and they're unwilling to pay for somebody else to do it, which I understand, but that's on the gym owner, right? Like you need to set up enough systems and quality systems so that if you do pour gasoline on lead acquisition, it works and you actually make it work. So, I don't want to make it sound like I'm against the marketing side at all. I'm very much for it, but typically the gym owner expects the marketer to do everything for them.
Yeah.
And that's not realistic because they're not paying the marketer nearly enough for that.
Yeah. It is kind of when you see these things, you kind of think that everyone's going to do everything, or as a gym owner, they're going to be the marketer, the salesperson, and everything like that. Whereas actually, until they get to a point where they can potentially hire a salesperson or anything like that, it is going to take time, because different areas of expertise can only do one thing. Like the whole point of we have a marketing manager at the gym, and her goal is to get the people in, but we also have a coach who has transitioned more into the sales side of things, that is going to actually convert that, and then the rest of the team of the coaches are there to provide the clients that come in with the quality of service that are going to stay into the gym. And then it's a case of, right, we want to invest in this area of the gym or this equipment or anything like that. So yeah, I can completely see how it's a bit more of a process rather than get everyone in, but there's no foundation that it's built on, which I think, especially from the coaches that are just starting out, that I've spoken with, is a factor that they're always running these ads, but they're never retaining any of these clients. That sort of moves into. No, sorry, go on.
I think it's important. Like I'm a self-responsibility guy. I like having responsibility on my shoulders.
Yeah.
I have found that there are a number of gym owners that, like, they're always outsourcing, right? Like, I don't need to know how to do sales. Like, I can have somebody do that. I can have, but they never take responsibility for learning how they need to sell for their business. Yeah. And then if that salesperson walks out the door, which they will, because there's not actually a good marketing pipeline, right? Like, then the gym owner has to start from scratch again because they don't know how to sell. So I think it's really important. That's why I think the business side is so damn important for a coach, is because if you know how to sell yourself, if you know how to get leads for yourself, and I'm not saying it's easy, but if you know how to retain your clients, the transition into being a business owner is so much easier. But if you think that you're just going to slap, a sign on an old warehouse and be a business owner, it's like, oh, no. It's much harder to make these work today than it was 10 years ago. Clients expect a lot more today from these gyms than they did 10 years ago. So you have to know those systems and processes, and you have to be able to train people to do it the way that works.
Yeah, and it's exactly like you said there. Whenever there's other areas of it, and I'm finding this myself, that I want to learn. It might not be an area that I'm going to 100% know the ins and outs and have a degree in it.
Totally.
But have the basics understanding of it. I use an example of I ended up covering. Sometimes I cover a boxing session. I'm not a boxer. I know the basics to get me through to do a class. But I wouldn't just walk in blind and just say, oh no, well I can't do that because I don't know how to do it. I think it's good to have these little strings to your bow, and take pieces of information that ultimately is going to help with your career progression, rather than saying, just disregarding things and saying, no, I don't need to learn anything from that. So I think that's a good way of looking at it, because yes, I know there's the coaching side of things on a gym floor, but there is obviously other areas that you can learn from on that as well.
Yeah. I've spoken to many coaches who fancy themselves amazing coaches, and some of them are, but there's a pretty consistent theme where people who find themselves to be very good coaches are often very angry at the people or the businesses who they consider to be bad coaches who are slaughtering them on the business side. And that's what, that's been one of my missions, right, in my time at OPEX, is to reconcile how great coaches can run great businesses so that they're putting the right systems into place to be successful, like those less good coaches who are crushing. And that's a difficult emotional thing, where if you've spent 10 years educating yourself as a coach, but you can't acquire a new client, that's emotionally taxing, right? But it happens a lot because coaches haven't built up the proper understanding of how to grow their own business. And I'm just saying how they get a client, whether they're an owner or not is moot. But you need to know how clients get to you, how to get referrals, how to close those clients. To me, that is a mandatory, whether you want to be a business owner or not, because that makes you self-sufficient and self-sustaining, where you don't have to have somebody do everything for you. But if somebody is there and can help you scale much faster, awesome. That's a good partnership. I just think it's much better for long-term success when a coach learns some of those basic skills to help themselves.
I think what made me smile when you mentioned that there is that, I've had a couple of conversations with other coaches and people within the fitness industry of, people who shout the loudest or who have the systems in place, regardless of whether they're a good coach or anything like that. They've taken the time to put those systems in place. And I must admit, at one point I had that same thinking. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But now it's a case of, maybe more so this year, of taking the time to learn a little bit more. I mean, obviously, with lockdown and COVID, sort of the positives to come out of it is that I do have a lot more time to read up on these things and learn a little bit more and develop, because, like what you mentioned about the quality of coaching or the servicing that they're providing, there are a lot of good coaches that we sort of want to stand back a little bit from the business side of things. But exactly like what we've touched on there, I think there's a lot more to learn and be able to develop a little bit more, rather than just sort of relying on have you heard how good this coach is, but there's no systems in place there. Just sort of touching on obviously we chatted about it a little bit at the start about the whole COVID situation. How have you found with the coaches that you work with in terms of how from a business point of view that the fitness industry might change a little bit and progress a little bit? Do you think that a lot more of gyms will start implementing the online coaching side of things, or change how they're doing things? What are your thoughts on that?
I think people are going to have to be cognizant of and movable to a digital experience as a just in case. Where I actually do think it's probably a mistake for in-person gyms to put all of their time and energy into trying to build out something brand new online, because that's called Peloton. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to beat Peloton, right? So the reason that those clients are willing to go online with you is because they've developed a relationship with you face to face. And coaches need to realize that's why. It doesn't mean that you can't pull in some new clients with a slightly different thing, but coaches need to realize they didn't build something amazing. Their existing clients just like them. Right? So that's a completely different thing, right? So it's like putting people on a Zoom call and doing a group class is not interesting.
I can confirm that.
Right. So if you're actually going to remote coach people, realize that at least in this moment, there's kind of two ways to do it. There's the template approach, so good examples of that, Miranda at Street Parking, Miranda and Julian at Street Parking, great example. They've done a beautiful job of making a platform capable of coaching people online at scale. Right. That's cool. Right. And there's other examples of that. And clearly people sell 6-week templates and 8-week templates and challenges. So it's the template and it's the one-to-one. Now, if you're going to try to do classes live, you better find a platform, which by the way, there's nothing great yet, right? But you better find a platform that allows you to connect to your local community, because the gyms who try to go global are going to get slaughtered because it's Peloton. But if you can have a live version, so for OPEX, right, when we had to go online, yes, we were capable because of True Coach, but all we called it was, we basically started calling it Do OPEX Anywhere. But our gyms were very focused on their local communities because they knew that the ultimate product was going to come back in person. It's like, hey, we can digitally onboard you, right? So it's like, we're still talking and setting the expectation that you will come live at some point, but we're going to digitally onboard you through our state-of-the-art system called True Coach. It's like, ooh, that's interesting. It's like, you're going to get one-to-one coaching, assessment, lifestyle design, nutrition from your coach. It's like, ooh, that's interesting. And then when COVID lifts, you can come into the gym. It's like, ooh, that's interesting, where you're going to have coaching from a world-class coach. It's like, yeah, that sounds good. I'll start that now before the gym even reopens. And so many of our gyms that pushed on that hard had a lot of success acquiring new clients. So to kind of get back to your question specifically, yes, I think that gyms have to have some part of their experience online, but I do think that they need to stay focused on their local area. They need to stay focused on their current client base and the 1 or 2 standard deviation, let's call them referrals, outside of that existing client base. And then they need to have the right offer to get people excited to do something remotely initially, which is then going to be followed up by an in-person experience.
Yeah, I think that's actually because it has been so. Over here in the UK, we got an announcement that we were able to do sessions outside. I've still been sending my clients training that they can do at home, and we're doing some form of online coaching. However, when it came to still doing the in-person sessions, the majority of all the clients wanted to come and do some in-person sessions. And it's been one of those topics before of like, we need to get everything online. Whereas actually those clients are still paying for coaching. They still want to come and have that coaching in person because they have that relationship with it. So I've been trying to find the best way of putting it across, but actually you sort of did a lot better job than probably what I could do at that. So I do think that is a good way of looking at it, because in your head you do think that with online coaching you're going to go coach people all over the world and it's going to be world domination, whereas actually exactly like you say, the people in the local area, those are the ones that are going to be able to come down to the gym, especially with it being an in-person coaching facility. So yeah, I thought that was a really good way of looking at it there.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So obviously, quite a lot of topics covered there, and a few tangents thrown in, which is always good. But the last question that I wanted to ask you, for everyone listening and all the topics that we've gone through, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom?
Well, I think contextually to this call, I think it's very important that a coach takes the self-responsibility to understand where they want to go and does the research to understand what it's going to take in order to get there. So, we're not reinventing the wheel here by putting a brick and mortar gym into the world. And there's a heck of a lot of information out there about what it takes, what it costs, what sort of resources you need, how to acquire and how to retain clients. So I would highly recommend that people do the work to realize what type of model they're opening, what is the optimal version of that, how long it will take, and what am I going to need to do to get there. If people do that, and by the way, this can clearly be done as a coach as well and not as a business owner. But if you do that work, you go into the venture with such better expectations so that you can actually make good decisions and give yourself the right amount of runway in order to achieve the big goals that you want. And I'll go back to saying that I think it's perfectly admirable where, you know, you might realize in 5 years, right? It's like, I did that, I loved it, maybe I want to sell this business or whatever. That's cool. You know, just realize that if you're going to put a significant amount of money down on something, you ultimately want to be able to sell it for something or make so much money that you can shut it down and you were still fine. Most gym owners are not doing the research to understand those points prior to getting into the venture, and I think that it's costing them.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to finish on. I know for me, on a selfish note, if you like, or a personal note, especially in that position of, you know, what's the next steps, if you like, in my career, if you like. I think that's some really good advice to sort of finish on after everything that we've chatted about there. So yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on the podcast, Jim. I really, really appreciate it. But for everyone listening, you know, coaches who either have got any questions on anything that we've chatted about today, or want to have a look at the programs and the projects that you mentioned at the start of the podcast through OPEX, where can people get in touch with you or have a look at the work that and the content that OPEX delivers?
Yeah, so I would just recommend OPEX, opexfit.com, or our social media handles mainly is, we do most of it on Instagram, so just at OPEX Fitness. And I'm just personally, I'm at Crowell Gym, that's Crowell, and then JIM. So happy to chat with anybody there. And thanks for having me on today, man. This was really fun.
No worries at all. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. And yeah, for everyone listening, if you've not been over to the OPEX website, there's loads of sort of really good free resources on there. And obviously, the courses that they do as well are absolutely awesome. So if you've got any questions or are looking to develop anything on that, 100% check out the OPEX website, because there is a lot of good stuff on there. So thanks a lot, Jim, for jumping on the podcast. Really, really appreciate it. I hope everyone listening enjoyed that as much as I did, and I will see you all next week.